right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. Next week, we do not have a speaker, but we do have a very special event that we are hosting for the first time ever here. It's the UT Energy Bowl. It's a live energy trivia quiz type of an event where there'll be 10 teams, 4 members each, that will be competing with each other on energy knowledge. And it will not be held here in this auditorium. There is more information online. It does require pre-registration. And my understanding is that the event is full, but if you're interested, please go ahead and check online as well. We have a very special speaker with us today. It's a great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Smati, who is the President and CEO of GDF Suez North America, which is the subsidiary of the global GDF Suez Group. Prior to joining GDF Suez, Dr. Smati held various executive positions in a number of energy companies, including being the President and CEO of BP Amoco Global Power and other senior executive positions, including at Amoco Power, Power Development for ARCO, and International Development for National Power UK. Dr. Smati holds a doctor's degree from Brunel University, England. I'm quite sure that Dr. Smati is going to talk about this in more detail, but let me give you some sense of the scale of operations of GDF Suez North America. It has approximately 13 gigawatts of energy generation in its North American operations. The global operation is much larger. It's among the largest industrial retail electricity suppliers in the US, and it has also very significant operations all over Mexico, especially in transportation and distribution of natural gas. And we'll hear more from Dr. Smati in a moment. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Sam Henry, who is the President and CEO of GDF Suez Energy Resources. Sam, you can raise your hand. And I mentioned that because I've had the great pleasure of working with Sam on several occasions before. He has been central in also making today's event possible. And GDF Suez more generally has been very supportive of research and educational activities here at UT. So it's a real pleasure to have both of you in the audience, and Dr. Smati, we very much look forward to your talk. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Great. That works first time. It's wonderful. Look, thank you very much, Harun, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's actually my first time here. Not my first time at Austin. I've been here about 3 or 4 times, although I've been living in Houston for 20 years. I really should have come here a bit more often, but I didn't. The good news is, since I've been here, which is now a few hours, my daughter kept calling me almost every 5 minutes. The reason she's been doing that is she applied to come to UT. So hopefully you're going to accept her, and she'll be very pleased to join here. That's really the main reason why I came here. Seriously, look, I work for GDF Suez. How many people have heard of GDF Suez? Quite a few. How about ENGIE? How many people have heard of ENGIE? Not many. So I'll tell you what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to highlight 3 topics to you. I'm going to talk about ENGIE, because nobody has heard of ENGIE, who we are and who is ENGIE. Then I will talk about the impact of technology on the energy sector, in particular the power generation sector and the gas sector. These are the 2 sectors which have been impacted in an amazing way by technology and will continue to be impacted over the next few years and decades. And finally, I will also talk a little bit about our company, how we are trying to reposition ourselves as far as this new energy transition is concerned. ENGIE is a new name, by the way. GDF Suez is now called ENGIE. Officially, it will start at the beginning of next year. So our name will change completely. It will be called ENGIE. Don't ask me how we came up with ENGIE. We paid a lot of money for somebody to come up with a name like ENGIE. Millions and millions of dollars. And so here we are. So we will be worldwide. The company is going to be renamed ENGIE. Partly, to be fair, we are a big company but not many people have heard of us because we use different brands around the world. This is one way of unifying the brand, and it'll be ENGIE whether you go to South Africa, you go to China, you go to Brazil, or you come to the US, you're going to see the same name. So ENGIE, or GDF Suez, is really a European group, but it's a group that is active around the world in 80 countries or so. We're very large. If you look at our revenues last year, it was 74 billion euros. If you look at the number of employees that we have 150,000 employees. And if you look at now at power generation, we have almost 150,000 megawatt, 150 gigawatt. We are by far the largest power generation company in the world. And we are the second gas company in the world, by far. We've grown significantly. That's also why so many people haven't heard of us. When I first joined the company here in the United States 15 years ago, I actually joined a company called Tractable, which became Suez, which became International Power, GDF Suez, and then GDF Suez, and now ENGIE. So lots of mergers and acquisitions, etc. But if you look at our presence, we are quite large in Europe, because that's really where we come from. We have 132,000 employees there, 50 gigawatt in Europe. Our revenues there are over 50 billion euros. A large presence clearly in North America, Latin America, Asia, Middle East, and Asia Pacific. So that's really the group. I don't want to spend a lot of time. If you're interested, I will talk about it further. I want to talk about North America. This is the company which is really responsible for activities in the US, in Canada, in Mexico, and Sam and myself work for that company. We manage that company. We have a lot of things here. We are involved in the LNG business. We have 2 regasification facilities where we import liquefied natural gas. They're both in Massachusetts. We also are building an LNG facility to export gas now. We used to import gas. Now we want to export it because there's plenty of gas here in the US. We have a gas storage business, 12 BCF a day. We have pipelines. Actually, these pipelines, 4 of them, they're in Mexico. We have power generation business, 13,000 megawatt. We have a lot of gas customers. We have 6 gas distribution companies in Mexico. And we have a very large retail business. Sam is in charge of that retail business. It is the 3rd largest retail business in the United States with 10,000 megawatt. We're active. If you look at where we have our activities and where our presence is, it's mostly, a lot of it is in Texas, a lot of it in the Northeast, and Mexico and Canada. We don't really have a lot on the west side or in the Midwest or even in the Southeast. So Northeast and Texas as far as the US is concerned. The other thing I wanted to highlight to you is that because we manage North America, so we are always fighting for capital within the group. So each head of each region wants to bring more capital to invest in the region. And I'm always very proud. We have these meetings every 2 weeks, worldwide meetings. It's an investment committee where each person brings their opportunities and fights so that you get money to invest here. So I always talk about the United States, and I just want to remind you, actually I talk about North America. Population, it's 480 million people. There is growth in North America, which is really unique, which is not the case in Europe. The population is growing here thanks a lot to really the Hispanic community. So as a result of that, we have growth, which if you look at Germany and Italy, population is actually going down. GDP, obviously, still the largest in the world with 20 trillion, it should be, not billion. GDP growth, it's growing. It's actually the only one in the world that's really growing right now, 2.8%, probably a little bit more than that. Electricity consumption, almost 5,000 terawatt hours, massive. And CO2 emission, which is actually going down, thanks a lot to gas and shale gas. So that's perspective. So I always have these numbers with me because I'm always trying to explain why is it that North America is unique as far as the world is concerned. Now, what we have here, we have 2,200 employees. Although we are very big, our revenues are around $8 billion here in the US, $7 billion. But we don't use a lot, we don't employ lots of people because we are really a capital-intensive industry, 2,200 employees. We are the #1 terminal player, LNG importer in the United States. We've been active here 40 years in terms of LNG, and we talked about power generation. Also in Canada, we have a number of wind plants. We got into the solar business and the wind business as well. And Mexico, I'm really bullish on Mexico. Lots going on in Mexico. Mexico is in a very good position now. They're highly productive. Obviously, the workforce there is very productive, low labor cost, coupled with the fact that they're importing gas from the US, which means that gas is relatively cheap. It's based on Henry Hub. Today, gas prices are around $3.50 or $4. Amazing. And finally, they're next to the US, so they can sell their products easily here. So it really gives Mexico tremendous competitive advantage. Now, that's ENGIE, that's GDF Suez. I want to talk about the impact of technology. What is energy transition? Energy transition is actually happening now. We tend to be involved in power generation, build big power plants, big nuclear power plants. The investment is $4 or $5 billion. You build big coal-fired power plants, $2 billion. You build big gas plants, and we have lots of those here in the US. $1 billion, $500 million. That's traditionally the model that we have. You build big power plants connected to the grid, etc., and that's how you all get your electricity. But I tell you, what's happening now is really remarkable. I'm sure everybody has heard of solar PV panel you put on your roof. The question is always, is that going to be competitive? Competitive with electricity produced from these very large power plants? The answer is yes. Actually, today, by the way, this slide has been done a few months ago, and this information is probably obsolete now. I was going to say today it is competitive in California, absolutely. California prices are high. New York. And so today, if you put solar panels on your roof in California or New York, your price is actually cheaper than what you would pay from the grid. And the projection is that in the future, in the next few years, for example, in Texas, 2018, it will be competitive here too. Why? Because prices are coming down. Just imagine now you have solar panels and you combine them with batteries. And if you combine them with batteries, can you disconnect completely from the grid? Because the problem now with solar panels, you have electricity during the day. What about at night? So clearly you still need to be connected to the grid to buy your electricity from at night. But if you were able to combine solar panels with batteries, these large batteries that people are talking about, all of a sudden during the day you can generate your own electricity, you can charge your battery, and at night you can use electricity from the battery. So that is real in Hawaii today, and it will be real in many other states in the future. Electrical vehicles, I mean, the number of electrical vehicles that has been sold so far, at least last year, 100,000. But the projection is that it's going to be in the millions, and you've all heard of the Tesla car, etc. And so everybody is moving towards that. And so the penetration of electric vehicle is really huge. Gas-based generation, the United States is really blessed with tremendous amount of natural gas, shale gas. And as a result of that, you could actually build smaller gas turbines, and therefore, for example, in a campus like this, you could build your own small generator using gas, so it'd be gas-based distributed generation. And what about the cost? The cost is competitive today in many states with big power plants too. Net metering penetration. The concept of net metering here is that what if you put solar PV on your panel, but you have too much electricity during the day? Can you sell it to the grid and sell it at retail price? In some states you can, in other states you can't. But in many states they allow you to do that, so if you have too much electricity, you can sell it back to the grid so that somebody else can buy that electricity during the day. And smart meters, which enable you to do all sorts of things. really, they're the norm now. 50 million have been installed, and the projection is that in the next few years there will be 130 million installed in the United States. So the transition, the energy transition is really real, and it's happening now. But why is that? In the United States, there are really four forces that are shaping this energy transition. The first one is shale gas and oil. It is having a massive, massive impact. And the investment in infrastructure that has been drawn as a result of shale gas is huge. This picture is an interesting picture, especially for people in the industry. It highlights two things. Before 2007, 2008, lots of gas. Can you point with this? No. Lots. Oh yeah, excellent, thank you. Lots of the gas is actually, in the past, used to go from the Gulf, because we have lots of gas here in the south, and then it was going to places where gas was needed, tremendous consumption in the northeast. So lots of pipes have been built to take gas here. And gas was more expensive in the northeast versus here. Look at it now. There's gas everywhere. And in fact, you know where the gas is coming from now? It's coming even from the northeast, and it's coming down here. Why is it coming down to Texas and Louisiana, etc.? Because gas is being exported. A number of terminals have been built here. These are terminals to liquefy the gas and then take it to other countries like Asia, in Asia and Europe, etc. Many terminals are being built. We are building one of those. And the first terminal will be operational, I think, next year. Is it late or next year? That's right. Next year, the first one by Cheniere, and the United States will be an exporter of gas as of next year. It is remarkable. Back in 2008, the forecasts were that the United States would be the largest importer of LNG in the world, because today it is Asia, and it is in particular Japan that is importing more LNG than anybody else. 2008, because the consumption of gas was going up in the United States, it was tremendous. And look at the prices. Look at 2014 and 2008, where we were. NYMEX, this is here in the US. 2008 prices on average were $8.82. In fact, the summer of 2008, prices went down to $15 per MMBTU. And now they're at around $4. In Europe, $7, they went also down to 6, or €7 down to 6. A remarkable shift, truly shift. So what I wanted to retain is the fact that 2008, the US was going to import gas. Now the US is going to export gas. Gas prices were very high in the summer of 2008. They went up to $14, $15. Now they're down to $3 sometimes. Amazing, amazing, amazing shift. By the way, please do stop me at any time. I know I've been given about 40 minutes, and then there will be question. If you have a question, please do stop me. This other slide is also interesting. What I wanted to highlight to you is the fact that gas is everywhere here. But look at the explosion, the growth that we've had in gas production from everywhere. It is quite remarkable. And production is expected to double again from today's level. It is amazing. This is having a huge, huge impact on the United States, the economy of the United States, and also investments. In fact, over the next 20 years, it's expected that in the gas area alone, there will be more than $300 billion invested in that area. And look at the investment around the country, everywhere. $45 billion in the central area. Clearly the southwest here, including Texas, you'll have $82 billion of investment. It's in the LNG export, petrochemical business, etc., etc. It is quite remarkable what is happening and the impact of gas. So that is unique. There is no other country on earth that has where you see that kind of impact from shared gas. Just doesn't exist. Now, the other force that is really having an impact on our energy sector is disruptive technology. And here, look at what used to happen. You guys understand this probably much better than I do. This is the waves of innovation. If you go back all the way to 1800, that's when people started talking about innovation. You know, you had the water power, you had the textile, you know, commerce started, etc. But it used to take quite a while. And the innovation itself was not huge. But look at it today. So look how wide it is. It took from 1785 to 1845 before we got another second wave of innovation, third wave. Look how peakier these innovations are. And this new wave of innovation is shorter. Things change fast. And the impact is huge. So that's really what is happening as well. So they arrive in this technological innovation are arriving faster, and they are happening over a shorter period of time. And then a new wave is happening. It is quite remarkable. If you look at the impact of this innovation in the energy sector, is amazing. Look at Tesla, a company that didn't exist. Look at Google and Tesla, the Tesla car. You know, it's quite remarkable. If you asked anybody in the past and you said, can you build a new car company outside Detroit? People would laugh at you. Why would you do that? You can't. All the innovation is in Detroit. There's no way, etc. The Tesla car is actually built in Silicon Valley. It is amazing. It is truly amazing. How is that possible? When every expert would tell you that you just cannot build a new car company. It doesn't make sense. And Tesla is here to prove that things are wrong. Truly amazing, truly amazing. Sure.
Can you explain what was the y-axis of that chart?
That's really the innovation and impact of it. That's all. It's just saying that there are lots of innovation. You have first wave, second wave, so time. And the impact now, you can see that it's peakier. The impact is bigger over a shorter space of time, that's all. It's illustrative. It's not to be measured here. Now, why is all of that? It's really the cost is coming down because of this innovation. Look at solar PV. 5 years ago, if you look at the cost dollars per watt, it was $4, 4.6 in fact. The forecast is that by today, apparently we were at 2.5, and the forecast is that by 2020 we'll be at 1.88. Well, actually it's not true. In fact, in 2015, we are close to 2. That 244 is a few months old. The cost is coming down in an amazing way. That is why you can now put panels on your roof. Look at battery storage, and by the way, look at the units that are being built. There was nothing 5 years ago. Now it's 100 gigawatt. Quite remarkable. Quite remarkable. 10%. Now 2025, it'll be 10%. But that curve, again, is being overtaken. If you look at battery storage, the price is coming down also drastically from $1,000 to $540 per kilowatt hours. Again, if you plot the new figures, it's even steeper than that. And that is driven partly by Tesla. Tesla, I don't know whether you've seen the announcement of the new battery that you can put in your house for $3,000. So essentially what you could do, these are beautiful, kind of, you obviously copied Apple quite a lot, these wonderful batteries that you can put in your garage. You can buy 2 of those, link them to rooftop solar panels, and then you can disconnect from the grid. Each one costs $3,000. And what's more, he's building a factory that would be able to produce, his gigafactory somewhere in Colorado, that would be able to produce 50 gigawatts per year. The total installation of the United States in terms of generation is 1,000 gigawatt. Just imagine, 5%. Quite remarkable. With that kind of scale, he clearly will be able to reduce costs drastically, because today, without that factory, he is able to produce that for $3,000. So the cost is coming down in an amazing way. And in general, you understand this better than me, the digital transformation. You look at what happened with the computing cost coming down back in 1990 from $527 down to 0.05. This is dollars per 1 million transistors. So people in the technology sector, in particular the computing sectors, are used to this steep declining cost curve, but not in these two sectors, but it's happening here as well. It is quite remarkable. And that is having a huge impact on our industry, the big infrastructure type industry. And the potential for solar alone, if you build solar in this region, Texas and the Northeast, the potential is 550 gigawatt, 590 gigawatt. I told you, remember, the United States needs 1,000 gigawatt. So potentially, long term, very long term, half could come from solar. Half of generation in the United States could come from solar. It's quite remarkable. Battery storage as well, technology. I told you the cost is coming down. The energy density is between now 200 to 400. Compare that with hydro and compressed air, etc. The beauty of that is that battery storage is instantaneous. You charge it up, it can come up immediately. That's needed. Pumped hydro, it takes quite a while before you get power. You have to pump water in order to get power. So, whereas with battery, if you could really develop it at scale, and it's happening now, it will have a major impact on our industry. The other thing that's happening as well, as we are moving now towards distributed generation, you say, well, we're going to move away from scale effect, and we're going to move away from centralized power, and we're going to lose out. Actually, no, because if you combine distributed generation together with computer technology, you can actually put together, even with distributed power, you could put together essentially centralized power again if you want to. So you'll be very flexible, so you don't have to use power only for your home. You could actually lend electricity to your neighbor. You can borrow electricity 2 days later when you need it, and your neighbor can borrow it today, etc. Whole neighborhoods can borrow from each other because the new technology, the new computing power is enabling you to do that. And the new power of the future is cleaner, and it's very local, and that's what's unique about it. Demand response is also something that's very unique, because today electricity, it's not so much average power that is expensive, it's peak power that is expensive. You can meet average demand all the time. For example, here in Texas, if you look at power that is consumed, let's say winter time, it's around 35,000 megawatt. Okay, but in the summer, it goes up to 65,000 megawatts. So you're going to have to build 30,000 megawatt of power plants, which is almost idle most of the time, except in the summer when people crank up their AC. So it's wasted, completely wasted. 30,000 megawatt, that's billions and billions of dollars sitting down there and sitting and they're idle. So now with demand response, if you're able to tell people, use technology to tell them, okay, switch off this because it's going to be very hot, so turn off whatever you're using right now for 5 minutes only. So you're able then to do some load shedding and reduce the peak, which means you can reduce electricity. And you can pay people to do that and still be better off as a utility. So there are various ways now with automation, with the new thermostat. You all heard of a Nest thermostat. It's really a beautiful tool or beautiful instrument, the Nest thermostat, because you can now control your peak, or at least the utility can control the peak and can reduce maybe temperature a little bit to save tremendous amount of energy. The other thing is, I talked a lot about things which are highly technical, where you invest a lot of money in, etc. But there's some other basic things. They're to do with lighting. And these are the light bulbs, LED as well. Think about it. 3 years ago, if you were to go to a store, to Home Depot to buy a light bulb, and you want to buy an LED bulb, you would pay around $50 for it. Today, the same one costs $2 or $3. So the costs have come down drastically. So if you go around your home, all you need to do is just change all the light bulbs and put LED lamps now there. You'll be able to save tremendous amount of electricity. So just by switching from the old-fashioned light bulb to the new LED ones across the US, you'll be able to save you'll be able to reduce demand in a massive way. Thanks to LED technology, which is now very cheap because prices have come down. Anybody can do it. You don't really need anybody to come and install like solar panels, etc. First thing you can do is do that. And the impact is huge. Look at consumption, how it can go down through lighting alone, before you go to anything else. So that's, again, technology. You can see how innovation, simple things, are having a huge impact. And by the way, when demand goes down, consumption is down, and that's having an impact on the industry as well, clearly. This third one is really the digitization and the new younger people like yourself and how they interact with their utility. And in the past, people interact with their utilities maximum of 9 minutes per year. Essentially, nobody really talks to a utility. There's no need. You get a bill, you pay it, and that's the end of it. Really, you switch on the light, and light comes on, and that's basically it. But things have changed a lot with the new generation, the new millennial generation. The new generation is going to be much more, well, it is a very thoughtful generation, but much more active. And the new generation is going to be 75% of the US workforce by 2025. The new generation is very demanding. They don't trust large companies, but they trust each other. And they trust their peers a lot. They are very demanding. They want things to be personalized. They don't want cookie-cutter approach. That applies also to even electricity and gas. And therefore, companies like ours have to be very responsive because they want to be green, this new generation. They want to be able to control everything from their iPhone and their iPads, etc. So it's a completely new way of interacting with the new generation. I remember 11 or 12 years ago when we started the retail company here, and really all that was needed was to sell electricity and be able to send a bill. And then things evolved. They said, well, you know what? I don't really want to receive my bill at home. I want it to be electronically so that I can get it via email. And then after that, they said, okay, I want to be able to see my consumption over 12 months. I want to do this. It's amazing how over just the last 10 years, what the consumer is asking for from the utility. It is really remarkable. It is changing in a massive way. Also, the concept which I mentioned a little bit, the virtual power plant, is there because of smart meters. You can have a load, you can have a lot of these small power plants, you can maybe oversize your own solar panels so that you are able to sell a little bit more to the grid or sell to your neighbor. There are lots of things you can do with technology now And it's a lot easier because of two things. One is the computer, and two is the smart meter. When you combine these two together, you can essentially build a virtual power plant through 1 megawatt here, 2 megawatt here, 3 megawatt here, and some kilowatts, instead of building a huge 500 megawatt power plant. So it's really changing a lot. And finally, we shouldn't forget about energy policy. Energy policy is having an impact. The biggest impact is really closing of coal-fired power plants. 70 gigawatts of coal retirement will happen as a result of new EPA rules. However, is it really due to EPA rules? I would say that a lot of it is really due to the fact that there is cheap gas in the United States, low-cost gas. And gas-fired technology is so competitive that coal is no longer competitive. In fact, coal is being exported to Europe, and it is Europe who wanted to be greener, etc., compared to the rest of the world. They are now burning more coal than certainly the United States. It's really ironic. So a lot of coal-fired power generations are closing down as a result of that. But there are standards in terms of energy efficiency, etc. So homes are becoming more energy efficient. As you know, the new lighting, we talked about that. All of that is having really a huge impact on the industry. So when you have companies like ours, what do we do? Because we normally build big power plants. We know how to do that. We build a 500 megawatt power plant. We spend $500 million on it. That's it. And then we sell electricity for the next 30 years. And we have maybe 12 people in that power plant operating the power plant. And all of a sudden, it's really changing. So how do we move from that world? Or we build a big gas plant. Same thing there. How do we move from there, where our business is really about investing capital, to a business which is, it needs to be small. It's distributed. I told you, the whole of North America, our investment here, we have 2,200 people. If you move to a different way of doing things, you probably need a lot more people. So if you look at the gas business, we really are moving towards more gas-based distributed generation. So we are working with universities, we're working with hospitals, etc., to build these smaller plants there. So we want to get into that business. We're even looking at different applications for the LNG business. LNG, traditionally, you sell it in bulk to utilities. Now, for example, in Massachusetts, in Boston, we have, next to our terminal, we have a gas filling station, but it's an LNG filling station where you have big trucks coming in. They fill up with LNG, liquid natural gas. They burn liquid natural gas. So that's another application that didn't exist before in the gas business, power generation business. We are going after solar business. We are going after the wind business. We are absolutely going to be involved in small-scale solar business, which is kind of not the kind of business that comes naturally to us. Retail. We are trying to be close to the customer. In fact, we have one vision that we keep talking about, is to become maybe the Amazon of the electricity industry. What does that mean? Or of the energy industry. It means that we come to you, we sell you electricity and gas, because that's what we know. But we might sell you solar, we might sell you distributed gas generation, etc. If you're an industrial customer, we don't have to own everything. We can do it through partnership. So we want to partner with different companies. We stick to our knitting, which is electricity and gas, but sell other products and services. So we are positioning ourselves to move closer to the customer, which in the past we didn't do. There was no need to be close to the customer because you build these big power plants and utilities, in fact, come and buy electricity from you. Now we want to be closer to the customer. We want to sell smaller things as opposed to bigger things. We are hiring younger people who are actually teaching us a lot of things. We are investing in startups, which we never did before. In fact, I went to visit Silicon Valley about 2 months ago. I was really blown away by the innovations that is happening there. I went to visit companies like Solar City, Tesla. It is really amazing. And I'm talking about what they're doing as it relates to the energy sector. I'm not talking about the traditional computing technology that they've always excelled at. It's quite remarkable, and younger people clearly think differently, and there is a lot of innovation. The challenge for us is how can we really move as fast as the industry or the new industry is moving, because we are not used to it. You know, we're a big company. We know how to invest big things. We can go around the world. We have good relationships with governments around the world. But now you have to be nimbler. And we have to readjust, and that's really why we are changing our strategy. If you look at our strategy today, we believe that in mature markets, and this is the United States, Europe, and the UK, we have to become a leader in the energy transition. We have to move fast to these new technologies. And we're doing that through starting up our own businesses, buying startups, etc. However, in more fast growth markets, emerging markets, we believe that we can continue with our traditional business model for a while. How long it will be, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 years, because there's an explosion in terms of population growth. People need power quickly. They need big power plants you can build quickly and supply hundreds of thousands of people. So really we have, whereas before we had one strategy, which is build infrastructure projects around the world, now we're still building big infrastructure projects in Asia, Latin America, etc. And Africa is a growth market for us. But in more mature markets, we're moving more towards energy transition. I'll stop here. I think I've used up more than my 40 minutes. Thank you for your time, and ready for your questions if you have any for me. Please.
If you have a question, please raise your hand, and we will give preference to students first.
So thank you very much for your talk. My question is, if you put like natural gas and something like solar together in the same picture, say for producing electricity, how would you predict the trend over time?
The trend of what?
Like how they compete.
Whether compete. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, I think there is room for both. I'm talking about the US now. We can talk about the rest of the world, which is very different. I think here there is room for both. Gas is very competitive. There's a lot of gas. And gas prices, you know, supply and demand. I mean, we've seen gas prices going down to almost $2 per MMBT, which is, we haven't seen those prices for 25 years or 30 years now. So gas prices can come down quite a lot. And then when you burn that kind of gas in a very efficient power plant, you can still be extremely competitive. Having said that, solar panels are coming down in price fast too. So I think there will be room for both. I don't believe, given the size of the United States, is 1,000 gigawatt, I don't think we're going to move to one world which is all solar or all gas. It's too dangerous anyway to rely on one technology. You always need to have choice, and you need to have a bit of everything. So I think in the United States it will be dominated long term by gas and solar. But for now, obviously, we have everything. We have nuclear, we have coal, still quite a lot of coal, quite a lot of gas. But I think for a while it'll be these two technologies that will dominate the United States. Now, in other parts of the world it's different. If you look, for example, at Germany, Germany used to have tremendous amount of nuclear, tremendous amount of coal. If you look today, they have a massive amount of solar and a massive amount of wind, even though it's not very sunny all the time in Germany. But why? Because they have subsidized it in a massive way, even though the cost of generating electricity from solar in Germany is quite high. They subsidized it. So they decided that was a choice to move that way, because they don't have gas. Gas is very expensive. So US is a little different just because of shale gas.
Thank you for your talk. I have a couple questions. One of them is, as you talk about, you know, moving towards small scale, using more solar, using kind of this distributed system, are you really considering the impacts of battery disposal? I mean, you talk about a lot of how these homes can store all this energy, but I think it's a huge issue and it should be addressed from the beginning, what happens with disposal. And then my other question, or more like a comment, is in terms of, I'm from South America, so that's what I'm going to mention is, why not look at this small type of, not big industry? Why go out there and build more infrastructure and not, kind of test the small scale there, and instead of testing it here? So that's both.
Where from South America?
Ecuador.
Ecuador, okay. We are in Ecuador too, doing some investment. Let me tell you, I'll start with the second one and go to the first one. South America. I mean, I love South America. I travel to, especially Mexico, because I look after Mexico as well a lot. And I see exactly what you're talking about. However, and also GDF Suez, by the way, is a huge player in Brazil. Brazil is a big market, lots of people, etc. Problem is that people there need power now. They need it quickly. Okay? And today, it is still much more efficient to build big power plant to supply hundreds of thousands of people very quickly. So governments are the ones who are building these power plants. So we go there essentially as contractors for the government. That's another way of putting it. They need these power plants quickly. I think what will happen in South America and Asia, etc., is that they will continue probably building these big power plants. And then the smaller scale generation will catch up. So at some point, it may even overtake it. When, I don't know. But for now, there's still a need for large-scale generation because it needs to be done quickly. It won't be quick enough to build solar panels for everybody. Some people can't afford them, etc. So whereas electricity, selling electricity to some people who don't consume a lot of it, may be cheaper right now. And sometimes in some countries, electricity is subsidized by the government as well. So government would prefer to buy electricity from us and then subsidize it. So, but I agree with you. I mean, a lot of people talk about whether the emerging markets would do what they've done with the phone system. Really, they jumped one technology. They went from nothing to everybody having a cell phone, and they didn't go for the landlines completely. It won't happen like that with electricity, but potentially they will move faster compared to mature markets. So that was the second one. The first one was the impact of batteries. I think that's a very good question. I really do. Right now, these batteries, if you look at the Tesla battery, it's guaranteed for 10 years. It's rechargeable, obviously. So you have 10 years before you start worrying about it. But I think long term, I think it's a very valid question, and I must admit I don't really have an answer for it right now. So there are lots of people who are thinking about it, but right now people are saying, well, if I install these batteries, it's going to last 10 years, so there's plenty of time to think about what to do with it. But it's an excellent question. In fact, I'll take it away and ask a few of my people about it. Thank you.
Hi. As a retail energy provider, so how soon do you think you will start sending out price signals to the customers, like people with smart thermostats or just price signals in general to the customers?
You know, it's happening right now. Here, even in Texas, if you buy, for example, your electricity soon from Think Energy, which is the company that Sam manages, you will be able to get a signal, or you can make it automatic. In fact, your smart thermostat can be connected through the smart meter to your electricity provider, and you don't, provided you authorize it in writing that they can actually interact directly with your thermostat, let's say the Nest thermostat, they can actually reduce temperature a little bit. And you tell them, look, I don't want you to touch my thermostat between these hours. I only want you to touch it between these hours, and I don't want you to move it more than plus or minus 5 degrees. So they can do that. So this is real. This is happening now. You You can do it also yourself. You can connect your Nest thermostat to your own, so you don't, if you don't want, for example, your electricity provider to do it for you, you can do it yourself. What they do is they can send you an email, and they'll pay you for that. They send you an email and they say, can you please reduce your thermostat by 5 degrees? And you can go to your iPhone if you are here and you do it and reduce your thermostat by 5 degrees. And if it happens, then your REP would pay you money to reduce your temperature at home. That's happening. That is today. Most, I won't mention names of the competition, but I know Think Energy will do it if they're not already doing it in Texas. Maybe not in the city of Austin, but because of.
Hi, thank you so much. So one thing I was curious about was you mentioned natural gas exports, and I'm assuming that plans around the price of oil rising once again. One thing I'm curious about is natural gas is very prevalent. You can get it anywhere in the world, more or less. So why do you think it's worthwhile to invest all your money in exportation facilities and liquefaction facilities?
That's a very good question, actually. Although there's a lot of gas, it seems everywhere. Actually, it's not everywhere. There's a lot of gas in, the biggest exporter of LNG is Qatar. So Qatar has a lot of gas. Russia has a lot of gas. Algeria has a lot of gas. Australia has a lot of gas. But there are also countries that don't. If you look at Japan, Korea, Taiwan, China, even India, they all need gas. And so how do they get access to gas? I mean, there are only two ways, through pipe, long pipe, or liquefy it, put it on ships, and then regasify it. It's extremely expensive. It's billions of dollars of investment. So, but LNG is able to connect essentially countries that have gas to countries that don't have gas. So if you look at supply and demand, up to recently, there was more demand than supply, and price of gas was actually very high in Asia not long ago. That has come down quite a lot. And also the reason why it was high is because Japan in particular, because of what happened there, they shut down their nuclear power plants, etc. So demand for gas has gone up. It's gone down a little bit. China, obviously, the economy is not doing as well. Demand has gone down. As a result of that, demand of gas has gone down, just like demand for oil has also gone down. So there's a little bit of surplus. When there is surplus, price of gas goes down. So right now, just now, this year, price of gas is down compared to what it used to be even last year. But when you make a big investment in LNG, you really are not thinking about what happens next year or the year after. You're making investment over a 30-year period. You're investing billions of dollars. So you forecast what prices are going to be, so that there will be some years when they're down like now, and many years hopefully when they're up. So when you do your investment, it's for 30 years, and supply, laws of supply and demand. Yes, there will be some years when demand isn't there because the world economy is not doing well, and there's a surplus. For example, now there's a little bit of surplus because here in the US we are building LNG facilities, Australia is building, and so there's a little bit of surplus of liquefaction facility, or there will be, but demand will come back up. I mean, China is not going to be like that forever, and the world economy will come back up, and eventually prices will strengthen.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I wanted to ask you about, in terms of the long-term kind of picture, the big picture of people going off the grid with a combination of rooftop solar and batteries. How much of a concern as a utility provider is that for you, and is providing solar services like the only method you have to maybe combat that possible loss of revenue, or what's your strategy in terms of that?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. In the United States, we are not a utility, so it's a little different. In Europe, we are. So is this a big threat for utilities? Absolutely, it's a big threat for utilities. So utilities are very worried and very concerned about it. what can you do? Well, you have to position yourself to sell other services. Either get into the solar business yourself as a utility, or maybe work with household to say, all right, maybe you don't need a battery. Maybe you can provide yourself with electricity during the day, and I'll work with you to provide you with electricity at night. Maybe I can buy off some electricity from you. You sell it to me, your utility, and then I sell you back more electricity at night when you need it. So we have to come up with different models. Have we got the model yet? No, we haven't. Not many people have. We are struggling. I mean, we think we are a little bit ahead of the curve because we've thought about it. Being a global company, we see signals in some parts of the world ahead of most people. If you're only a utility in the United States, you could be a little bit complacent and think, well, nothing has happened yet. It's true. It's not massive here in the US yet. So we've seen it in Europe. Europe is massive. The impact is huge. Look at some companies like E.ON and RWE, German companies, that they're hurting right now. So we see the impact in Europe, the impact on us, and therefore we're trying to position ourselves to get into these technologies and be able to interact with the customer. But we'll see. I mean, the future will tell us whether we are the company that will survive, or whether there will be smaller companies that we've never heard of yet that will take over the utility space. It's an excellent question. I don't think we have an answer, but we're trying and moving as fast as we can. Probably not fast enough, because it's changing in an amazing way. I've been in this industry for 35 years. I started when I was 5 years old. 35 years, and I've been through 2 revolutions as far as I'm concerned in the energy sector. I'm talking about the energy sector. I went to school in the UK, and so I joined a utility in the UK. It was a wonderful job, really was, because I went and did electrical engineering, then I went to this utility. Everything was done for me. In fact, when I joined the first day, my boss told me, look, this is the office where you're going to be, and in 40 years, this is the other office where you're going to be when you retire. And that's what will happen. You start off as an apprentice engineer, then you're going to be, I don't know, first engineer, second engineer, third, fourth. And when you're 40, after 40 years, when you be, whatever, 60, 65, you will retire with a wonderful pension, and you will die 2 years later. Because the average age then, okay, for the utility sector in the UK, that most people would die at 67. So I get to enjoy my retirement for 2 years. Anyway, that was the time. So that was the industry. I looked and I was horrified. I was young, like you guys. I think, oh my God, this really... But I knew where my office is going to be 40 years down the line. So, and that's how it used to be. You have a job for life. Everything is great. And my parents were very proud of me because I joined the utility. Hey, it's good. And then Margaret Thatcher came and took charge of, I know some people like her, some people don't, but put that to one side. She really introduced a revolution in the industry. She created the concept of a private utility, private company, which didn't exist anywhere around the world. So she privatized the utility. That's what started the IPP business, and the industry became very innovative. Then you start trading electricity, trading gas, etc. Before Margaret Thatcher that privatized the industry, none of that existed anywhere of the world. And then the rest of the world copied actually the UK. Now, that was a revolution which changed my life. All of a sudden, my life was fantastic. I started trading gas, electricity. All of a sudden, you could build algorithms to do all sorts of clever things, and lots of people like you joined the industry. It was amazing. And then the industry continued to innovate. And now this is, in my opinion, a second revolution which is going to have a huge impact on the industry. We didn't know then where the industry was going, and we don't know now where the industry is going to go, honestly.
Thank you again. So on your previous charts, as an IPP, you have a 80% natural gas, it said. Where do you see utility scale solar? Are you pursuing that? There seems to be a lot of exciting contracts at very low prices in Texas on that. And how do you see the portfolio mix? and is dealing with your, I'm not sure, stranded assets, but past undepreciated assets. Is that basically your biggest problem as a company compared to your ability to invest in new technologies?
You know, utility scale, so I'm glad you mentioned it. I didn't tell you mention it. Utility scale solar is also very important. I think it was here, City of Austin, they did an RFP and they got price 40, was it $40? Or 38? 38, 40, I can't remember. Amazing. How did that happen? It is remarkable. So the cost of electricity from utility scale solar is coming down drastically. So clearly that has to be part of the mix. There's no doubt about it. And in fact, not so much here in the city of Austin, but I know in Massachusetts, you could build utility scale solar and you as an individual can buy a little bit of that directly. So that, again, innovation is happening. So I think it has room, absolutely. It's part of the mix, and it is possible that maybe utility scale solar will be cheaper and better than building rooftop solar. Absolutely, in some places, that's probably the way to go. So that's why I really believe that solution is just not one technology, it's a mixture of technology. And things will evolve and continue to evolve over the years. So although I kept talking a lot about solar panels, but really I was just trying to simplify things a little bit. But utility scale solar, I agree with you. I was amazed by the price that City of Austin was able to get. And there were, I don't know how many bidders, 50 bidders or whatever, maybe more. It's remarkable what City of Austin has done.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smati, for spending your time and your
Thank you.